Hi, it's Dennis Daly, and a happy Memorial Day weekend. Some years ago, I put together stories of my childhood under the title Daddy Had a Dollar, and one of those stories centered around Memorial Day. My good friend Jimmy Weldon narrated it, and here it is again, my thoughts on the Memorial Day weekend.
In my childhood, growing up in Indiana, when it came to what you might call the regular holidays, each had its own special significance. We all have a flood of memories rushing toward us when we think of Christmas or Thanksgiving, for example. But there were three other holidays that always evoke memories of better weather, of summer vacation, and freedom from school. Memorial Day, the 4th of July, and Labor Day. Actually, I should put in an amendment here. The first two of those holidays always remind me of the time when I wasn't tied to school. But alas, Labor Day, though a part of what I think of as summertime vacations, actually signaled the end of summer for me. You see, when I was in school, our summertime vacation was ushered in by Memorial Day. It was brought to a close by Labor Day. Today it seems like kids have a much shorter vacation than we did. Often we got out of school a few days before Memorial Day. Now things are different. But back to the three warm weather holidays. Of the three, Memorial Day has a special spot in my heart. You may remember that the holiday began as Decoration Day, a time set aside to adorn the graves of the dead from long-gone wars. I can remember as a child going to a small cemetery in a little town where my mother had grown up. She would decorate the graves of her long-gone parents and aunts and uncles. Often soldiers of past wars would show up in uniforms in which they served. I remember asking my mom about some veterans in what I thought were odd-looking outfits. They served in the Spanish-American War, she told me. You'll learn about that when you get older. For me, though, eventually Memorial Day became less of a time to decorate graves and more of a time to share a wonderful ritual with my mom and dad. I was an only child until I was 10. By the time my sister was born, I was already suffering from a condition that many people who are an only child developed. I was horribly spoiled. So on Memorial Day, Mom and Dad let me do just about anything I wanted. And what I wanted to do, ironically, was to spend time with them. Memorial Days were mostly bright and warm in Indiana. Had to be. After all, God wouldn't allow the 500-mile race to be run in a thunderstorm, though on rare occasions he must have had other things on his mind, because weather and the race became a mess. Memorial Day was the day when my dad did his one really thorough cleaning, washing, and waxing of the family car. I knew the yearly cleaning was about to take place when he would look me in the eye and say, "Go put on your worst clothes. We're going to wash the car." I would oblige and catch up with him as he pulled the car from the garage. We'd hook up the garden hose and go to work. Before settling down to her special Memorial Day job, Mom had gotten buckets and rags and cleanser and even brought the vacuum out to the driveway. But Mom's real job that day was inside, and it was a very special job. She would sit at the kitchen table with that day's issue of the Indianapolis Star newspaper, and for a period of about 4 hours, she wouldn't budge. You see, this was the day of the Indianapolis 500, and we had every radio blaring the coverage. All across Indiana, it was the same story. It seemed that all were tuned in.
From Indianapolis, Indiana, scene of the world's greatest race cars, this is Sid Collins saying welcome to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
On the front page of the Indianapolis paper was a listing of all 33 drivers for the race and a grid to keep track of their progress at 100-mile intervals. As she listened to our big kitchen radio, Mom filled in the blanks. In her mind, she was the chief statistician for the race. And she wasn't alone. There must have been tens of thousands of ordinary moms who, for one day, pencil in hand, were the official recorders of the Indy 500. Out in the driveway, Dad and I had all 4 doors of the car open. We pulled out floor mats, cleaned windows, rearranged the glove compartment. But before doing any of this, Dad had cranked up the car radio so we could listen to coverage of the race. It began with a masterful setting of the scene. We could hear the fans cheering, all 500,000 of them. We heard the national anthem and the singing of Back Home Again in Indiana. Then we held our breaths as the words, "Gentlemen, start your engines," were spoken by track owner Tony Hullman.
Gentlemen, start your engine!
A thunderous roar went up as 33 of the finest racing machines in the world thundered to life. For the next 500 miles, we were wrapped up in the incredible word pictures that an amazing crew of reporters was painting. I know in my heart that listening to what they were saying, picturing the reporters, microphone in hand, frantically describing the action on the track and in the pits, planted the early seeds in my mind that I, too, wanted to be in radio.
And the Golden Anniversary 500-mile race is on! The number 1 bird at Mike Ahern.
The chief announcer was Sid Collins. He set the standard in the world of race broadcasting. It was Sid who invented a special cue for local stations when it was time to take a break.
Now stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in racing.
Even today, when I hear that phrase, I get goosebumps. A decade later, Sid would come to Indiana University and guest teach at one of my journalism classes. At the end of the lecture, he asked if any of us had questions. I raised my hand. I asked Sid if he would recite his network's cue. He smiled, drew breath, and spoke the phrase. I knew at that moment I had chosen the right career. So, as I listen to the race this year, and I never watch it on television because the radio coverage is better, I'll think of Sid and the reporters who covered the race in my childhood. As Mom sat in the kitchen, pencil in hand, glued to the coverage, and Dad and I washed the car. Back in my childhood where it seemed nothing was wrong and everything was right, as we listened to the greatest spectacle in racing.
And until that checkered flag's unfurled, it's the greatest, 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 greatest race.
Thanks for going along with me and listening to some thoughts about my childhood. I'm Dennis Staley. Have a safe weekend.